Welcome to the GIT industry panel. Oh, I like how quiet it got. That was nice. Woo. Do more woos. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're super excited to present this panel to you. Online, we have 100 people almost online. We have almost 100 people in person, and we're going to manage all of this from right here, and it's going to be great. So expect that things will go wrong, and we'll all be flexible and happy to be here and in person. Online, I just gave you some event website links as well as our Slido, and I'll explain that in a second. But first of all, as you explore your career path, it's important to look to industry for guidance and mentorship. And so tonight you'll hear from a diverse set of voices in the design industry, and hopefully you'll identify with the type of design that they do, some of the experiences that they've had, or their intersectionalities. And feel welcome into this design community because you're so welcome. So let's get started. Hello and welcome. I'm Professor Christina Karaschia, and I identify as neurodivergent, as well as a first-generation college graduate, as well as a second-generation high school graduate. And I'm really excited to bring together so many students and industry panels together tonight. Yes. Right now, the design type that closest aligns with our interests is 41% saying UX, 22% saying front-end web dev, and there we go. Watch this. I'll just switch the slide. It'll be fine. 10% interaction design, 6% print, 6 photography, 6 for creative art design, 5 for visual effects, 2 for illustration, 1 for motion graphics. That's surprising to me anyway. All right, so that very janky setup that I presented just now is our interactive portion for the show. There's also a live transcript, which you should be able to see now at the top of your screen as I've just dragged it there. But you can also get to that screen by going to live transcript, and you can change actually the font and the size, and you can put it wherever you want, which is also kind of awesome. If you're watching the recording, which you're not right now because you're here, why would you watch the recording? The live transcript will be open on the window to the right of your screen. All right, getting to our agenda for this evening. We're going to have a little bit of a welcome acknowledgement, talk about our sponsors, students, and panelists. We'll then do introductions and then have a moderated Q&A, which you can enter right now via Slido. That information is at the bottom of your screen and will be throughout the presentation. So whenever you get a question in your mind, go ahead and add it there. Indigenous land acknowledgements do not exist in the past or historical context. Colonialism and is a current ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. I honor and acknowledge that ASU's campuses reside on the ancestral territories of Indigenous peoples, including the Akil Ahodim and Peepash Indian communities of the Salt River Valley, whose care of these lands and waterways have sustained and nourished our desert homeland. It's important to understand the long-standing history that's brought us all to reside in Arizona and to seek our understanding of our place in that history. If you want to read more about ASU's statements on land acknowledgements, I am dropping that into the chat right now. All right. I want to thank ASU Career Services, ASU Fulton Engineering's Career Services for sponsoring our event today. You can find more information about career services and help at the FSC Career Center website to the link that's in Zoom right now. I also want to thank the AAGA Poly Student Club for sponsoring this event. You can join the student group on our Slack channel on GIT Slack workspace on the #club channel. And you can also buy swag, design swag, and GIT swag at our merch store, and I'm putting those links into the slides now. Natalie online has a great question. Where's the link to pose a question? At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Slido with the Slido number, as well as being able to enter your questions there. You can also answer the live polls. Great question. All right, moving right ahead is our next Slido. We want to rank your interest in the following workplace types. Oh, okay. Agency, in-house, or freelance? What are you most interested in? Agency, in-house, freelance. There's the slider that I was telling you about that was so interesting. Interesting data visualization. Natalie online putting that Slido number in the chat for you. You are so welcome. Looks like most of y'all are interested in agency, closely by in-house, and followed up by freelance. That is pretty much the vibe that I get from students these days. We do have a lot of interest in in-house, and it's slowly edging up to agency right now. So that's kind of where their students lie within this discussion. Our panelists tonight, we want to welcome you. Thank you so much for being here and for just being so supportive as I'm dealing with some tech things on this end and having a good time. Alan Bashaw, the Executive Director of Product Design for Ariba. Vanna Tesfaye, the Senior Designer for Netflix and Anheuser-Busch. Oh, I don't have my camera on anymore. Here we go. Technology, two computers. What am I doing? Ben Jackson, the Senior Web Developer and Design and Dev for Paper Tiger, as well as Studio Jackson. And Jesus Garcia, UX Generalist from State Farm, and Matt Lean, Creative Services Manager at, is it CNUA or is it CUNA? It's CUNA. I'm so glad that I asked. It's CUNA like cucumber. Got it. Mutual group. Thanks for being here tonight. On this next slide, you'll see the expertise areas that closely align to what it is we do here in our design program. And this is also available on the event website, so you can actually take a look at that. If you want to direct your questions to one of the panelists, you're welcome to do so, or you can direct it to in general. All right, introductions. Here we go. Alan, you're up first. Alan is joining us from online and Zoom. Alan is our first guest, Executive Director of Product Design at Ariba. Alan identifies as a first-generation American and refugee. His expertise relevant to our discussion tonight is interaction design, user research, and UX in the in-house setting. He describes his job as herding cats to collaborate and elicit enough requirements and context. Start design thinking exercise. Alan, take it away.
Hello. Can you hear me okay, Christina? Can I get a thumbs up?
Perfection.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm joining you from Oceanside. I'm on vacation. Sorry, timing didn't work out. Otherwise, I would be there. A little bit about me. I got my notes. So I got to go through my notes, really. I was born in Canada. My family were refugees from the Middle East, so I'm first generation. First one, went to college, got a big job, enterprise, corporate America. So that's kind of been fun. And my sister's hot on my heels, trailblazing as well. I've lived in Arizona probably most of my life. I've spent some time back in Canada and Florida working at a startup with some gators in our backyard. Yes, real live alligators. And but mostly been living near ASU, live in North Tempe right now. Married to a wife from Nebraska who's a transplant, went to U of A, got smart, transferred to ASU, married with a 4-year-old now, and he's going to be a future engineer. Kind of a funny story. We're at a birthday party recently, one of his first two, and had a giant inflatable water slide And he didn't care about the slide or jumping in the water pool. He was inspecting how the whole thing was built. He was checking all the safety nets. He was playing with all the zippers, and he was playing with the air inlet where the fan was blowing it up. So it's kind of funny. I've spent 20 years in the field of UX, so I didn't have formal education like most of you do. So kind of brought up through mentorship. Most of my experience has been in B2B, business to business UX applications. So it's understanding business users and what they're trying to accomplish and helping drive the interface to accomplish their goals in a user-friendly manner. My career has mostly been about formulating relationships and networking. And for probably the first 10 years of my career, that's how I found new jobs and new opportunities. So I encourage all of you, network as much as you can. We didn't have LinkedIn back in the day, so I had to do a lot of talking and maybe taking people out for happy hours and drinks to build that rapport. My focus in my career has been about research to reduce risk upfront, to inform on design. There's other ways of doing it. Obviously, if you're in a lean startup methodology or a lean UX, you can start with your designs and then do some extensive testing. But I try and push research first, especially in a business to business application. If you're working on a video game or some B2C applications, you know, take a different route, do what works for you in your industry. I've always communicated from my perspective that in B2B, that the business model, which is kind of driven through requirements from business leaders, and the mental model of who you're designing for, help drive the interaction model. So for me, it's important that people understand the core principles of interaction design, and that helps feed and funnel design activities. At Arivia, where I'm at today, my team is small and mighty. What you see here is an affinity of our first physical meeting together on my first 90 days at the organization. And some of my team members have never met before. They're all virtual through the pandemic. And my question to them was, what does design mean to you? And it was an activity and just writing out all their thoughts on Post-it notes. So this was all done analog. And this is the digital transcription of it all. And so it was fascinating to see all the different answers that my designers came up with. And then we affinityed all the different responses into the blue columns. But one of the ones that kind of resonated with me was the one that's highlighted. Design is the result of history and evidence. And I can't remember the rest because it's cut off from Christina's screen. But what it does for me is what it always embodies, and I keep sounding like a broken record, is, you know, where has the user been in their journey? Where are they right now? And where do they want to go? And that really helps feed what you're trying to design and where you're trying to guide your user from a usability perspective.
Awesome.
So I appreciate, yeah. And just real quick, sorry. I appreciate being part of this. I've hired multiple people out of the GIT school and out of the Polytech campus. I love what you guys are doing there. If you guys have questions or just want someone just to, as a sounding board, please feel free to reach out to me through LinkedIn. Hopefully in 2023, my budget opens up and I'll be knocking on your doors for some more hiring. Thanks.
Awesome. Alan, thank you so much for that introduction. Now we are moving on to our next poll, which is, what's your go-to sketching device? Do you like to use a sketchbook, your desktop, laptop, tablet, paper, Starbucks napkins, or Wacom tablets? And we'll wait to see those answers coming in. Tablet, very nice. On Procreate, probably, yeah. Procreate is kind of awesome for that. Sketchbook, a bunch of traditional sketchbook. 33% there. Starbucks napkin, whatever's closest, right? Ooh, sketchbook taking the lead with 42%, 44%. Oh my gosh. Sketchbook, traditional sketchbook. That's interesting for a crowd that is so sort of tech focused, I think. Awesome. Let us move on to our next guest. Our next guest is Banna Tesfaye, Senior Designer at Netflix in Anheuser-Busch. Banna identifies as Black, Indigenous, or person of color, as well as a first-generation college graduate. Her expertise is relevant to our discussion tonight is print and digital design, illustration, motion graphics, visual effects, photography, and video, and in the in-house or agency settings. Vanna describes herself as a creative that specializes in creating unique and impactful brand worlds. Vanna, you should have control of the screen so you can take it away.
I would love nothing more. I don't know if I do have it, but
Yeah, there might have been a technical
Oh.
glitch on our end. Maybe you do now, though.
I think I got it. Yeah, I do. Okay, we're going too
Fantastic.
fast. I'm sorry. Okay, well, hi guys. My name is Vanna. Like Christina wonderfully introduced me, I'm a creative designer specializing in consumer products, entertainment, and food and beverage. And we'll kind of go into the journey a little bit. But I graduated from Northern Arizona University. I'm a ride or die lumberjack. But you know, I am happy to be here with some Sun Devils. I'm also, you know, not to hop on the refugee train, but my parents came to America when I was fairly young, brought all their siblings in. And when I decided I wanted to go to school, I went into every immigrant parent's dream, which was computer science and computer engineering. And I spent 2 years in that world before I realized that my real true passion was in the creative world and the creative side of things. So I hauled myself over to the design program, and I spent the next 2 years getting my BFA in visual communications. And from there, I've kind of built myself to be a creative branding world specialist, from in-house to agency to freelance. So I hope it's gonna work. Maybe not now. There we go. So yeah, for the past 6-7 years, I've kind of immersed myself into the branding world. I've worked with so many great clients in so many different industries. But I kind of want to go through and talk about the process of consumer products specifically. When I started designing, I hopped around a lot of places and I did a lot of freelance, and I was kind of overhauling myself. Until at some point I decided I really wanted to get agency experience. I wanted to sit somewhere as a creative designer and like basically be open to every and almost all design aspects. And I felt like an agency did the best world of that. And I also really felt like my design style was really specific and I wanted to stretch that. So the first job I had at an agency was at R&R Partners in Phoenix, Arizona. They're based in Las Vegas. And I went in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, thinking that I was going to be working on like these great clients and I was going to have so much fun and get to show my special chops. But to my surprise, my very first client that I ever worked on was Seaworld. And I talk about this specifically because Seaworld tends to be my most controversial client in my design career, and also the most impactful client I've ever had as a designer and a creative. So when I joined onto Seaworld's team, they were looking to kind of overhaul their advertising and also their brand message. At the height of a lot of controversy in the world, Seaworld wanted to bring authenticity back to their consumers. And I, who had no experience in consumer world, took on this challenge with a very small team of redefining what that meant. And one of the first big pitches I ever pitched to a corporate company was Real Feels Amazing, which was a campaign for Seaworld to kind of move away from focusing on animal interactions and focusing on real people's real, immersive experiences in their worlds. I think it's, yeah. So I talk about this because as a designer, I feel like it was really easy for me to sit there and think about designing in my own conceptual space. And Seaworld really challenged me to start thinking about the consumer specifically and how to step outside of, the controversial world and also your morals and, deliver a really good pitch to a client and a really good product. I myself was never really a fan of Seaworld, and a lot of people at my agency, attested to not working for them and not wanting to be on this pitch. But I took it upon myself to really be a strong conceptual thinker and how to reimagine Real Amazing. So one of the first big overhauls was redoing their consumer strategies, and from a design perspective. So me and my design director introduced their evergreen system, which was essentially how they redefined their brand guidelines to a consumer standpoint. So I created so many different guides, and I reestablished their photography guidelines to be more people focused rather than animal focused. And we got to be key players in Seaworld's world. And from a consumer standpoint, you know, it's really like integral to us to be able to understand specific demos that are not necessarily aligned to us. And so for the better half of 2 years, I focused on this document and all the documents that came in between. But one of the greatest, funnest projects, I guess, that came out of this was Icebreaker, which I got to design a roller coaster for them. And that was an extension of, you know, the consumer product line. And I had to understand what that meant in the first place of designing a roller coaster, but I got to bring this brand identity to life and see it all throughout the park. And then from there, you know, they trusted me to start bringing in and having control of their other identities. So Discovery Cove was a subsequent park of SeaWorld that wanted, you know, a new brand overhaul. And after all the work I did for the last year and a half, they trusted me to kind of take creative reins, which meant, you know, working in almost all aspect of that brand, from the website to television spots to digital to paid. I was kind of doing it all and acting as an art director. And I kind of got to have a little fun doing a lot of production stuff. And I kind of edged myself into that world of understanding, you know, high level projects and work. This is a GIF and it's not working, so you're only getting this one photo, but it's a great photo. And it's part of a line of photography that, you know, we got to produce for them. So in this world, I thought, you know, after 2.5 years of working on SeaWorld, I kind of thought, I'm done with working in the consumer world, right? Like I feel like I took on the biggest challenge there was as a creative, which was working with a brand I didn't align with. But unfortunately, consumer products didn't want to leave me yet. So shortly throughout my time at R&R Partners, I got reached out by Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch, and they saw a lot of the work that I was doing and said, hey, you know, they started a new team called Innovation, which was basically a team that was specifically focused on creating new brand identities for new products coming out to consumers. And so they were net new products. They had done no testing for these products, and they wanted to build a creative team that, you know, could bring these to life. And I was one of the few designers on that team who sat on that. So I worked on almost every product packaging you can imagine in the beer world. Little did they know I was not a beer drinker in the first place. But you know, it's really interesting to be able to work in consumer products because I, again, was testing waters of how do I relate to a consumer that I don't identify with? And how do I, you know, take that challenge on as a creative and step outside of my own preference of a creative world and put myself in their shoes? And so we did a lot of strategy-based thinking and research in my creative design. And I got to work on a lot of different product campaigns that came out of that and on a production level as well. So Boxology was my first baby that was born from innovation. It was the first product that got launched that tested really well and was successful enough to make it out of the launch pad, what we call it. And I got to see it all the way from the beginning conceptual stage all the way to the end of production and all the content that came afterwards. I wish all these GIFs were working. But a year ago, I ended up moving over to an internal team that focused on the premiumization of our beer brands in our portfolio. So now I kind of got to sit as a more creative director approach. Like I said, I wish you could see the visuals on this, but we got to create a lot of stunning content visuals, specifically in certain demos that we were targeting, like the Hispanic communities that were, you know, indebted to brands like Stella Artois and Estrella, moving over to the heritage brands like Budweiser and Bud Light, and defending those brands from a consumer standpoint was my name tag, I think you can say. So I got to do really great work, really great content, and also direct a lot of campaigns and ideas this past year and a half for these brands that truly tested my limits on what I was capable of doing. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity I have. But of all that said, I felt like consumer products was where I was staying. And so now I sit on the consumer products team at or at Netflix, working on consumer products and brand partnerships for all of the IPs. And so I can't go into a lot of details, which is why I don't have a lot of content from this. But this is what I do now. And I feel like consumer products is where I'm going to stay at this point. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanna, for sharing. And this brings us up to our next poll, which is rank the design periods from pre-1950s from your very favorite to your least favorite. Art Deco, modern, futurism, Victorian, Art Nouveau, Swiss, or arts and crafts. Remember back to design history. Arts and crafts, not as popular as it pre-1950, Matt. Futurism and modern. Okay, interesting. Like 2 years ago, it was all Art Nouveau and arts and crafts. The kids like different things nowadays, I guess. Back in my day. All right, looks like Art Deco and modern kind of tying there. Futurism, Victorian. All right, very interesting. Our next guest, Ben Jackson, is senior web developer at Paper Tiger and designer and developer at Studio Jackson, as well as a faculty associate here at ASU. His expertise relevant to our discussion is print and digital design, digital marketing, interaction design, and front-end web dev in the in-house and agency settings. Ben, welcome.
Everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for having me. So I am born and raised from Arizona. I went to ASU and actually graduated from the VCD program from Herberger in 2015. So I kind of have like a traditional graphic design, Swiss design background. Yeah, and I think like my path to design is kind of unique and development actually. I went to ASU initially and got accepted, planning to major in math, which is extremely different. And then I kind of got like Sunday scaries for college right before I came here, and I'm like, I cannot do math every day. And I was like, what do I want to do with my life? So I thought like back to high school, and I took graphic design class. It was super like elementary, but I really enjoyed it. And it was like the homework I always did first. So I was like, shoot, I guess I'll do design. And it was a really hard 4 years, but I got trained really well at ASU and became a really, I think, solid designer. But then while I was at ASU, we had one course in the VCD program to learn how to develop like really basic HTML and CSS. And again, it kind of just like sparked that interest in me. It was always the project I was doing first. It came to me like really naturally. And because I like math, I think development kind of fit into a really nice like midway, especially front end dev. It's kind of like the in between design and like science and math and computer science. So through my time like at ASU and after, I've kind of done a little bit of everything. I've done print. I designed a game, like a projector game. I've made a bunch of websites, branding, everything. And right after I graduated from ASU, I started at, can you actually go back one, please? Sorry, my intro is taking a long time. I didn't put a slide for it. Yeah, so right after I graduated from ASU, I got a junior designer and developer position at Fisher, which is a local ad agency, and really got thrown into the deep end like immediately. I think it was my second day, and I got told I'm working on my dream client, which is the Phoenix Suns, and I had to make 12 different banner ads for their like home opener against the Mavericks, and animate them in Flash, which I was like, crap, I've only used Flash like 5 times. And now I have to make all these banner ads in like half a day. And you know what? I figured it out, did it, and it was super cool. And looking back, it was like definitely the bottom of the barrel work that they were throwing to me as a junior, but I loved it and I was super happy. Um, and I worked there for like 4 or 5 years and worked on a bunch of different clients, APS, Palo Verde, the Phoenix Suns. I mean, the list kind of goes on with local and national clientele. And so I got a lot of good experience. And while I was working there, I was a front end developer and designer. So I was doing a little bit of both. And again, development kind of took, my interest. And after I left there, I started freelancing. So for those of you who are interested in freelancing, it's really hard, but super rewarding. And that was kind of like my goal, like all along in school, is to freelance. And so I started freelancing and working like crazy hours. And that kind of comes with the territory. And then, after 3 years, one of my agency clients reached out and they were like, "Hey, we have a full-time job. Do you want to like work with us?" And so I said, sure. And because I really wanted like insurance and stuff that I didn't really have. And so I started working with them full time, which is Paper Tiger. And I started with them in February. So I'm a senior developer there and I'm only doing development. But at the same time, I still freelance a bunch and teach at ASU. So got a lot of stokes in the fire at the moment. But yeah, so I only have 3 slides, but I think they kind of tell like a really nice story of different people that you work with like throughout your career. So this first slide is for a social media agency based out of LA. And this slide is like one of my most recent projects. And I think it's one of my favorites to date. I worked with a huge team of developers. I worked with a guy in Italy who developed this like really cool capsule module, and like trying to like coordinate with him how this WebGL like interaction was going to work was super cool. And the site has a ton of crazy animations. If you can see the URL, it's socialhouseinc.com. You can check it out. There's lots of cool stuff. But, I was working at my agency who were people that got referred to me by word of mouth. If you can advance to the next one. And then this slide is for a music festival that was slated to start in March of 2020, which clearly got canceled. But we made a super sick site for them. This whole like hero is parallax, and we coordinated like a synthesizer to your x-axis and y-axis like cursor movement, and it sounds like aliens, and it's super cool. But this project, like not only is it just like really cool, but I worked on it with one of my best friends from ASU who I met while I was in design school. And he's one of the people I collaborate very closely with to this day, and gives me tons of like crazy interactive projects because I don't know how he always scores the really cool stuff. But the connections you make like while you're here are super important, I think, because I mean, to this day, I've collaborated and worked with a bunch of like my fellow classmates. And you just never know who may have worked for you and may have a connection for you, or, maybe work at an agency or in-house and can get you a really cool job. Like I've gotten freelance jobs at Facebook and lots of really cool sites and projects from people I met at ASU. If you can move to the next one, please. And then this last one isn't necessarily like the most creatively like crazy, but this is actually like my younger brother. He does like EDM house music. And so it was actually like really fun, like working with family. I don't know if I'd ever suggest to anybody to work with family, but family and friends are going to hit you up when they figure out like what you do. I get hit up all the time to do like random miscellaneous stuff, and I can't say no. So I always get like conned into this. But this project was super cool. I mean, he was like, "Dude, do like whatever you want. This is like kind of my vision." And so I got to like coordinate the photography for the album cover, all the single covers. I got to design merch, do like a bunch of stuff that like I actually wasn't doing a lot of, but he still trusted me. So it was really cool. And I think also just kind of shows like the different types of projects I've worked on. So it was super fun. And I mean, this is like the one family friend project that actually turned out really well, and I didn't like get really mad at them at some point. So that's why I like to include it. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I think these 3 slides kind of show like a really nice story of like the different people you're going to work with. But yeah, and thank you guys for having me out. I'm really stoked to be here.
Thank you, Ben. All right, our next poll. What is your favorite primary or secondary color? Red, yellow, blue, orange, green, violet. If you're just joining us, you're looking at Slido. You can log in with that QR code or go to slido.com and enter in our event number. Blue, not a surprise. Not a surprise. 80% of the population would describe blue as their favorite color. Here we're at 28%, but that makes sense. Still our favorite color overall. Followed closely by green and violet. All of the cool colors. Green. I'm into green right now as well. Like emerald green. Interesting. Yep. All the cool colors on top and then the warm colors on the bottom. Interesting. Cool colors. No, it's design psychology, Matt. It was like cool. It's on fleek. Is that a thing we say still? No. All right. Our next guest is Jesus Garcia, UX generalist at State Farm and freelance graphic designer at JMG Design. Jesus identifies as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, as well as a first-generation college graduate. His expertise relevant to our discussion tonight is print and digital design, illustration, and UX in the in-house and freelance setting. Jesus describes his role as user-centered design consultant and user experience design subject matter resource for the agent or associate experience design team at State Farm. Jesus, welcome.
Hello? Okay. This is a lot more people than I realize. Like, I love doing these kind of things, but I'm also very terrified. So when I do this kind of stuff.
That's fair.
I'm gonna go to the next slide. It's more like my intro spiel, kind of go through like a little bit about my history, and we'll go to the different parts with some design and kind of correlates to my 10-year of design experience. As a child, I always liked to draw a lot. I actually didn't draw like normal things that people draw. I used to draw, buildings or in vehicles. At a time I wanted to be an architect or maybe a car designer. But those architect, there's some math involved, and car designer is actually, in my opinion, one of the hardest design jobs to be a part of. So I kind of strayed away from that because I didn't really know about graphic design even in high school, but I did have a cracked version of Photoshop. So gotta get the serial numbers. This is before the Creative Cloud stuff. So I started doing a lot of my design stuff in Photoshop, not realizing like it's you're supposed to do photo editing. I had Illustrator and InDesign, but I was too scared to use those cracked versions as well, but I never bothered touching them. But it wasn't until I went to NAU that, my original major was going to be something in IT, maybe could have led into development, but, do some IT work. But I took one design class and that pretty much switched my entire trajectory. Because now it was able to bring some of my creative side that I had in my youth. Now I can be able to do it as a career down the line. During my time at NAU, you can switch to the next slide. Because these two design pieces kind of involved during my time at NAU. And it was heavily involved with AIGA at that time. Started the student group there. Been a member since 2007. So from time to time, AIGA will have different competitions and different things like creating posters to get people out to vote. And both of these posters, and you'll see the other one in a moment, they were showcased both at the RNC and the DNC at the respective cities, being projected out in the museums there. So it's kind of nice to get that honor to like, hey, we like your posters. We want to, show them at these galleries. If you can switch to the next one. And this one I was very proud because eventually the tour was going to come to Phoenix, and they were going to have all these voting posters at the state capitol. And unfortunately, this was not shown. It was a little too controversial because both of these posters were talking about how your voting affects, your, like the first one talked about, what we vote, who we vote for affects our neighbors to our north and the neighbors to our south. And this one's more point blank about dealing with the whole immigration, that your vote does matter. And again, so this one was unfortunately not shown, but I guess it kind of shown like the importance of sometimes design can be controversial, but sometimes design can be important. And it should, not everything needs to be designed for a product, for a brand, but sometimes you got to design to do things for good or promote, like voting. They've also done other initiatives too, like how to redesign ballots to make it easier. So that's kind of more like a user experience. It doesn't have to be digital, but how can you make even a ballot even easier and better for people to do? I can go to the next slide. So, I was up at NEU, started in 2003. I left school at 2010. I technically did not graduate, but I had enough of a portfolio to be able to start working, move down in the valley. It was kind of the mist. Oh, crap.
It's not going to work.
Yeah, I just realized like GIFs aren't working after seeing Banna's slide presentation. Like, crap, I better up mine up a little bit. So none of my GIFs are working. Anyways, so I moved down to the valley in 2010, started working in-house for a skincare company called PCA Skin. And it was kind of the tail end or maybe the beginning of the recession, 2008. Things were not great, but there were still jobs out there. But during that tenure, kind of went through different jobs because everything at that time was more. I was dealing with being a contract worker, 6 months here, 6 months there. Eventually in 2012, I had a little bit more of a stable job working at Rio Salado College. Before that, I was at Gateway Community College, so that kind of got me into the higher education field when it comes to doing design work on the marketing side for them. Started driving up to Flagstaff once a week. This is before they were more remote friendly. So the teacher had me drive up to Flag once a week so I can finish the one class so I can actually officially graduate in 2012. Yes. So I think it's important that, I think, as I teach at GCC as well, people ask me about, is it important that you go to school? And I always suggest that, if that's something you really want to do, I kind of recommend it. It does help you make connections, build a better portfolio, and hopefully after you graduate, get a job after that. So I did in 2013, had a stint at an agency, did that for a year, and maybe it wasn't it wasn't like Fisher, we didn't have like the Phoenix Suns, but with the creative team, it was always fun working with that team. With one of them I became good friends with, Richard Haney, and I did freelance work after I left there as well. But it was always dealing with. They were literally there was 2 floors, and they were on the second floor, so the art or the accounting executives were literally above us. Trying to get all these things done in proper timelines without really consulting us. But that led to going at 2014, where I spent most of my time, my career at a company called WebPT. They're a SaaS business where they create rehab therapy software for physical therapists to do their documentation online, billing, even scheduling, a lot of things for that field. And this was probably one of the funner projects that I've done eventually near the end of my tenure there. Because when I first joined, I was like, oh, I want to, hopefully be part of a rebrand. And it finally happened, or slight rebrand, because we didn't switch the logo. They were too scared to do that, but they were very open to like updating the iconography, actually designing a system so that the company can scale. Because we had different products that did not, it looks like we were 3 different companies from the original product. They had one look. Then we acquired some other ones that had a different look, and then we created some new ones. So we decided to create a whole system to be cohesive. Even since I left, they're still using that system. I can see the new products and using the icon system, updated the coloring, branding, new typography in the logo. And then we also did a complete redesign of the website, and that was completely done design side for me on Adobe Xd, make a lot of the interaction designs, all 50 plus pages, and even our blog site had to be redesigned. And then we worked with our own in-house developer to develop this new marketing website. You can go to the next slide. And then near the end in 2020, I was kind of in a crossroads. It was either trying to find something that was either more maybe more leadership role, maybe try to become an art director, creative director, or maybe kind of switch into more UX UI design, because I kind of did that on the side as a freelancer. So I did projects for UI for like medical devices, some websites. So I kind of figured I think I want to go in this new route because I think with that field, it's ever expanding. There's a lot of jobs out there. A lot of companies are realizing the importance of UX UI, especially with the recent news of Figma being bought by Adobe for $20 billion. That kind of shows like UX UI is kind of a big deal. So I kind of want to jump on that wagon while I'm still able to and young and spry. So I took the initiative and pursued a UX certificate through General Assembly. It was like a week-long, very intensive a program that was kind of designed for those that had design background, because they do have ones that are more, more expensive. It'd be more a lot longer of a program, but this one was designed for people that had graphic design experience, but they want to transition over. So this was kind of the project that I did for that eventually helped me land a couple of roles in that field with kind of like another agency, more of a consulting firm called Optimo. Their primary client was USPS, which would led to Nudesic, a little short stint at ASU, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, I just couldn't stay there because I needed more of a remote friendly role, because I do have a child and another one coming down the pipeline, which led me to starting my role at State Farm as a UX designer with them. And I've started there back in June. So unfortunately, I think that was a problem with the UX work, is like, I do have a lot of work. I just can't show a lot of it without taking the time of either blurring out the logo or swapping the logo. But, but I should be hopefully able to answer some of those questions in that, especially when it comes to maybe making that switch, what kind of pieces you should be creating for it. But yeah,
Nice.
that's me in a nutshell.
All right. There's another poll. In Slido, preferred background noise while designing. Do you like to listen to music, watch TV, the buzz of a cafe or coffee shop, white noise, or silence? Complete silence. I don't know what that's like. I have 2 kids, so I'm unaware of silence. Big fan of brown noise lately, though. Look it up. It's a thing. Music, 66%. Silence. Ooh, okay. Coffee shop, TV, white noise. Lo-fi is my go-to music for designing. Yeah, we do also talk about what we binge watch while we design, while we're working. I very proudly watched all 15 seasons of Supernatural in one summer, which is I mean, it's great, but also like I invested a lot of time in that and no regrets. Sure. Good time. All right, looks like music is definitely our go-to. And last but not least, Matt, too good for the second T, lean. Our final guest this evening is Matt Lean, Creative Services Manager at CUNA. Like Cucumber Mutual Group. His expertise relevant to our discussion tonight is creative direction, print and digital design, motion graphics, visual effects, photography, and video. In the in-house setting, Matt says, I am hired and trusted to fuel brands. That starts with being able to translate creative ideas into business solutions. This only happens by developing trusting relationships with amazing designers, and I advocate for doing the right thing. Matt, take it away.
I didn't think you were going to read that. Otherwise, I would have spoken much higher of myself and like put some compliments in there. For my...
Matt, I'm the fuel.
I am the fuel. That is not what I meant to type. What's it like to be spry, by the way? I want to know. So I'm so glad that I didn't attempt to do a portfolio review next to these folks. I thought I was proud of my work until I saw some of this stuff. But so this story is very simple. Although I could talk a week about how hard it is to go through any career. It doesn't matter what your job is at any point in your career. If you care about something, it was hard. And so I have this picture of the car because when I was 13 years old, don't worry, I won't cover every year.
Wait, is this an appropriate story?
What's that?
Is this appropriate?
Oh yeah, no, I filtered everything. You know, I as a kid, I was a storyteller from the start, and I was lying a lot. And so I had, no surprise, right? I had this teacher who handed me this fancy device called a camera. And back in those days, it was a really fancy new technology. We put these big, huge boxes inside the camera, and they record things on this film. That's a whole nother class, but or talk. But anyway, I fell in love. He was like, you got to put all your lies in this box and keep all your truth on the outside. And it just made sense to me. It locked in. I was like, oh, I get it. I still lied a lot for a long time, but that analogy helped. And I eventually kind of figured the thing out. But at the same time, I'm like thinking I want to be a filmmaker. That's all I knew, is I wanted to be a filmmaker. I got my first job in the car business in a parts warehouse. And this job while I was in high school and then into film school was like, you know, I started getting promoted and things started working out really well. And so then there's this point where like film school wasn't really that fun anymore for whatever reason. And I got this opportunity to make a lot of money. At the time, I thought this was just like the most amount of money I'd ever make in my life. And I dropped out of film school and I stayed in the car business. And the short version of that whole thing, I spent 10 years in the car business, working at a car dealership. And it was at that place that I learned about integrity. I learned about people doing the right thing. And I can go on and on and on about that, but people are often surprised that that happened at that place. It was a really special time at this particular dealer group. They were number one in the world in what they were doing, both in sales and customer service. And I was getting an education that was way over my head. I had no idea the opportunity that I was being blessed with in that moment. And I keep this picture, and for anyone that's a car person, I know they're two different cars, so relax. I had somebody call me out on that once. But what would happen is I'd learn people would generally come in with an emotional concern. My car is broken. It's not a car, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of parts working together in 140-degree weather, trying to keep you running around safe and save your life and, you know, make sure the stereo is working, whatever. Like there's so many things happening on this automobile, but I had to meet them where they were emotionally. And that was the education that would then catapult my career. There was finally a point where I was like, forget this, I'm going back to film school. Went back to the Art Institute of Phoenix. They don't exist anymore, but that's another thing. But it was a good education at the time, and it got me what I needed. But by the time I went back, I had a passion in me that no one was going to get in my way. It was probably offensive to some people that I worked with. You know, you might all be in class with somebody like this, where they're like, I will work at all hours of every day and I will annoy the crap out of you at every minute to get this done because I'm on to the next thing. I don't have time to hang out and talk through stuff and get to know you. I have a career to build. And what I would ask on behalf of those people is hold them accountable, but give them forgiveness. They're just trying to figure life out. Or maybe that's a statement about me. I'm not sure. So, but the reason I talk about this is because as designers, we are problem solvers. We know that, but to anyone that's working with us, we're creatives, right? We're artists. We're the fun ones, and we're really hard to figure out. Own that. There's a responsibility that comes with that to meet people where they're at emotionally. And that's the thing that I took into my career. And I'll tell you, I have the awards. I have a portfolio that I am actually proud of. You know, I I can show you things, but you know, like I'm not, but right. No, I don't put them online. Like, chill out, man. But what I've learned is that if I just work hard and be kind to people, everything works out. And my career did not follow some plan that I thought I would have. As much as I wanted to write it out, it never went the way I wrote it down, but it still got to where I needed to be. And better things happened than what I could have written down. And so there was this journey through like my teenage years, college years, in my 20s, and even into my 30s, where it's just like, and I'll stop counting there because I don't need y'all wondering how old I am. But there's just this point where I went, oh, wait a second, this is applicable to any career at any time for anyone. Just work hard and be kind to people, and the rest is up to you. You know, any advice that we're going to give you is just our story. It's what we experience, but it doesn't have to be your path. They're just ideas, right? And they're just moments that we went through that may not be replicated all the time. So this picture just helps me understand what my job is today. If you want to go to the next slide. So I've worked for, I did the independent thing. I tried to own my own business. My craft was filmmaking and motion design. And there was a point where like I was broke beyond belief. I'm living at mom's house again, with a 4-year-old daughter and trying to build a business from the kitchen table. So there's that story. And it was really hard. And I was not nice to people because I was trying, like, now I'm living with my mom. There's nothing fun about this, you know? And so I need to get out. That's just a story about me and my mom, whatever. So, so anyway, I'm just telling you all this because, the awards came not when we tried to win awards. Awards came when we weren't trying. Great friendships and great projects came out more when we weren't trying. It was when you were just working hard and being kind to people, and then greatness naturally comes out of those environments. And so today, at some point I got an in-house job at Banner Health, and got to learn a lot from some really great people. Started to understand what an in-house job looked like, went through that journey of transitioning from freelance agency life to in-house, and then got a job in the energy business with Arizona Public Service. Ben and I are still doing the math. It's probable that we were in a conference room together at some point. And it's also probable that I made him change something he didn't want to change. So, you know, your network is important. Always be kind to the people you're working with. But today I work with an organization called CUNA Mutual Group, financial services. And my joke is that I've worked in all the most hated industries in the world: healthcare, automotive, energy, and now financial services. So I'm on a roll. I don't know what's next after this. But what's really cool about this business is they have these 14 brands, and we got to make them all one. And it's a huge company. If you bank with a credit union, you probably use their products and don't even know it. And the effort is to make sure that people know who they're working with. And it's a beautiful organization. So by May, we'll be true stage. And right now, when I'm picking, you know, is the yellow too buttery, or like, these are real conversations and you all know it. I also know that there are, you know, these businesses, Banner Health, APS, whatever, they're billion-dollar businesses. And so it's not just about picking the yellow. We have to justify the yellow, prove it, you know, and that goes back to, again, the work hard, be kind to people, and you'll end up in places that this is more school than I'm working hard. I was telling these guys, I'm working harder right now than I ever did in college, ever. Like, I kept thinking, man, I can't wait to graduate. I'm still in school. I'm working with really smart people.
Don't tell them it's a trap.
No, no. It is a trap. No, here's the thing: is you either love this or you don't, and that's your choice, right? And so fall in love with what you're doing, and if you're not loving what you're doing, be okay with the journey of finding what you love, because that takes time too. So that's kind of, I guess I'll stop there.
Nice. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Well, as you may have noticed, we have 6 minutes left. But does that mean we're not going to get to questions and answers? not at all, not whatsoever. In fact, what we'll do is we'll keep going as long as these folks are kind enough to stick around with us. Vanna does have a hard stop. She has a meeting right after this, so she will kindly drop off when she needs to. Alan, and the same for my panelists. Whenever you can, if you need to leave, please please don't hesitate if you need to. But we can hang for a little bit. Zoom attendees, this one's just for you. What city and state or country are you logging in from? All right, if you said Polytechnic, I hope that you're here. Girl, I'm out front eating the food that was, I'm at the Starbucks across the mall. Lots of folks in India tonight. Memphis, Jersey, North Carolina, Hong Kong, Maryland, California, Wakanda. Okay. Asgard. Okay, this is devolving into a Marvel, which I'm here for. I'm here for it, but also fantastic. Thanks for letting us know where you're at. You have now made it to the question and answering phase. So all the questions that you've been entering into the system, we're now going to go through those. Thanks to Professor Barnett, who has been going through and probably responding to some of the questions that she can answer that aren't necessarily for the panelists, but we'll go ahead and go through those now. Again, you can ask a specific question of one of our panelists or in general. Here are sort of the top questions, and also you have the ability to vote up. So with 20 vote ups, we have this question: what's something that immediately sparks interest when you see it on a potential hire's resume? Matt, I imagine this might be, you do a lot of hiring. What is something that sparks your interest when you see it on a potential hire's resume?
The truth. There is something that happens after you've seen several resumes. You can tell when somebody's trying too hard. For example, if you're gonna tell a joke, you better be a funny person when we meet. Right? That really just happened. Dry as can be, like not funny dry, like So the resumes don't try and be something you're not, because it just sets it up for failure. And don't try and like figure out the algorithms. Like it'll work out. And the thing that we look for is the actual experience. We look for the actual mission of the person, and we actually try and figure out if they're a good fit for the job. It sounds like old school stuff, but it's real. And that's how we look at it. Now, before I see, there might be 200 applicants for a job. I might look at 20 of the resumes. So I don't want to discount, the algorithms. I shouldn't have made that joke probably. But be honest about what you're trying to do in your career. And be yourself in the resume. If you think you're great, say that, because somebody's looking for somebody that believes they're great. If you are a little bit introverted, say that. We might not want somebody coming in and thinking they're the greatest thing on the planet. We might want somebody that's hungry to just kind of like do their own thing. So personality is a really big deal when you're hiring. It just is. And in addition to all your experience and the portfolios and all those things, the other thing I'll say is if you're just coming out of college, don't worry about the portfolio. Do your best work and put it on there, but don't assume that we don't know you're just out of college. Like we're not, we're meeting you where you're at. And so tell the truth, be yourself, do your best, work hard. So put your best foot forward in the resume and let the rest be. It's just it takes the effort, I think.
Excellent. Honest and authentic, my two favorite words to say in class, because it does come across for sure. Thank you. You kind of answered this as well, but I'll go with our second question here that was voted up 16 times is, do you have any advice for someone who wants to land a job in the field right out of school? Is that even a realistic goal? Banna, can I throw that over to you? Because um, I feel like you've landed some amazing stuff right out of school. What's your tip?
Yeah. Gosh, I would say have the best understanding of your skill set. I think that there are a lot of opportunities for companies to poach right out of college. I will openly, honestly say I was a victim of that. I joined a company right out of college with the bright idea that I was going to be doing certain things or working on certain projects, and I didn't do enough research or have a better understanding of what I wanted to do, rather than just taking on the job in the first place. I will say that obviously there are a lot of caveats to that of why people need to be getting jobs, which is like I needed money. I needed to support myself and my family. So I wasn't too picky. But yeah, I would say have a great understanding of your skill sets and what you want to do, and find companies that are goal oriented towards you. And also don't be embarrassed or feel frightened to ask them questions and interview them just as much as they're interviewing you, because no matter how young you are, they brought you into the interview process because you're talented and because they like your work. So just remember that.
Awesome. Thanks. Our next question with 13 votes up is, what do companies look for in user experience developer? Alan, you might be the best to answer this, and Jesus might have some inspiration after.
Yeah, so for UX developers, that one's actually kind of tricky for me since I'm building that department from the scratch up. So Jesus might have some good insight there, but just to echo what Matt with 1T said earlier, always just be yourself and be truthful. And if you have something visual to showcase in your resume or your portfolio, show the design process or just show the process of how you got to your final conclusion. That carries a lot of weight for me when I'm reading through resumes and looking through portfolios, but handing it off.
Excellent. Jesus, do you have anything to add to that?
No, because I'm more on the design side versus developers. But we do work with developers side by side. But yeah, that I don't know. The next question I might have better answers for.
So we'll move on to the next one. What kind of projects do you think are more desirable or stand out in a portfolio for UI UX design?
Like to me, it isn't like a specific type of project, but is that you have a couple of like proper case studies that you took into time to fully develop, a user flow, doing research, creating personas, creating all these different elements that are part of a UX web portfolio. That's what, to me, what matters. Even at the end, creating like for me, like obviously, since I had the design background, my prototypes, those pieces tend to look nicer versus like maybe my research side. So maybe if you were maybe stronger on one side, maybe try to focus some of the other parts that you don't have a lot of experience in, like mainly on the research side, to try to maybe build that part as well, and being comfortable interviewing and talking to people, because that's kind of the two sides about UX UI design. Especially if you're in a small company or a small firm, you're maybe in a situation where you're doing all that kind of stuff versus, like something like at State Farm or even large companies, we have a UX researcher, we have a developer, and I'm more on the design side. So, that's more my strong side. So I think for starting out, it's good to be more well-rounded. And then as you grow in your career, you can kind of decide, oh, I kind of like doing the research and talking to people and doing the user testing, or maybe I'd like the UI. You can maybe transition from a UX UI to a UI designer or a visual designer and focus on that side.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot in class. What happens when you focus in UX in research or development? How do you show that visually on a portfolio? Because it's not a very visual thing. So it is something that even our front end designers or developers, how do you show your code? How is the code this visual thing that you want to see? And so maybe Ben, you can kind of speak to that part of it. Well, how do you show off these things that aren't very visual, like code?
Ooh, I think just showing projects in the real world. And I know like I've like reviewed portfolios of developers who are, starting out or just finished a boot camp or just graduated from school. And a lot of times, yeah, you don't like have client work. You don't have like a really cool site that's an e-commerce site or something. But what you can do is like a lot of personal projects. And I think that's really important in the beginning. Like when I was a student, and I think this is actually for portfolios in general, like show off who you are as a person. Because I mean, when I was at Fisher, I'd look at like 100 portfolios from ASU students, and it's like a lot of the same projects. And I'm like, I don't know who you are as a person. And I think especially like nowadays, agencies are more focused on like having good culture fits as well as like good work. And so like in my portfolio, I talked about how I'm like a huge fan of basketball and I love shoes. And then it worked out that I worked at an agency that had a professional basketball team, and my boss was like super into shoes. So like we could bond, and it, I think, helped me out a little bit. But yeah, like for developers specifically, like if you have a GitHub, like that's a really good way to show your code, and just like tooling around and building cool stuff. I don't know, like when I look at developer portfolios, I think like the biggest attribute is somebody who, is trying new stuff. And then when you talk to them, like they're not afraid to ask questions, and you're not afraid to fail, because development is like 99% just failing constantly. Like I've been doing it for like 10, 15 years, and I still like forget semicolons at the end of lines of code. Like I was debugging that today and I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? So like, yeah. And if you're stuck with something, like ask people for help. Like today I was, my boss, who's been in development for like 25 plus years, like came to me to ask for help because he thought I would know how to do it. And like, you have to kind of put your ego aside and be like, yeah, somebody may know this better than me. And it's not worth 5 hours for me to like try and figure this out.
We were just being a little weird right there because we teach the web classes, front-end web design. And this semester we implemented everything through GitHub and GitHub Pages to out, which we were like, everyone do this. We promise it's going to be such a good thing for you.
GitHub is such a huge skill, and it's something I didn't learn when I was like a student. I had to pick it up when I was like working in like crazy code bases and totally messing up and like deleting master branches and stuff and getting myself into trouble. So learning all that now is super awesome.
Also, if you ever class with me, I always forget, is that a space or a semicolon or yeah. Good times. See, in real life, I told you people do the same thing. You never know. Use your resources. All right, I'm going to skip a couple questions and go down to a Jack and Jane of all trades, or should you stay focused on one skill set? Groove and Banna would love to address this question. Banna, what do you think? Jack and Jill of all trades, or do you want to do focus?
If you had asked me this 4 or 5 years ago, I probably would have said focus on one skill set. And boy, am I happy that I've decided to be a jack of all trades. And that being said, like, I think that focusing on one skill set motivated me a lot as a designer, as someone who wanted to creep up and find my focus and my drive. And as I started working in a bunch of different industries, I feel like it helped me stay focused until I kind of got to this world of being like, okay, now I'm too like hyper focused on what other people are doing and comparing myself to other people who are in this industry to a standard that I will never meet. I have creatives in my life that I know are on a completely different path. And as I siloed into that path, I realized it was just going to make me more frustrated. So when I fully embraced being a jack of all trades, it also helped me understand what it meant to be a conceptual designer and to oversee creative executions. Once I started understanding how other teams work and other, caveats and dividends of creative design worked and operated, I was able to trust my team to be able to get collaborative work done. And on the other hand, like when I have direct reports, be able to understand their workflow and be more adherent to them. So as someone who's not really in the UI UX world, I'm not going to lie, like I don't know how much that differs, but from a creative standpoint, if you ever feel like you want to become a conceptual creative or someone who does a lot more directional work, I think it's the most important to be a jack of all trades. Understanding other creative teams is the only way you'll be able to be a strong creative leader. What with all of that, unfortunately, I will have to dip. I enjoyed talking to everyone. It's so great to see some familiar faces. But if you guys have any more questions or anything you want to ask me, feel free to find me on all the interwebs. I will be there for you. But thank you guys again.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I understand you have to drop off, so thank you.
I would like
Bye,
to
guys.
provide a different perspective on that question. For me, in my in-house team, I prefer to have people with some specialization so they can focus deeply on a task or a problem. So if someone's more analytical and they're more research minded, I really want them to get into nuances of research, especially if I'm taking research data to leadership to make a business decision that's going to cost money or put us at risk. And the same goes for design. We always want to have our best foot forward. And if someone's not comfortable or experienced designing in a fast-paced environment or an environment where there's deadlines, mistakes can happen in an enterprise or a B2B environment. Sometimes those mistakes cost money. So I like to have someone who's got a specific experience in that niche and then place them in that position because they'll have a higher chance for success, in my experience.
Do you find for the panel, do you think though that it kind of ebbs and flows the industry? Sometimes folks want a generalist that can do all the things, and sometimes they want someone that's a specialist. Or do you find yourself looking for kind of different roles based on economy and that sort of thing as well?
Just gonna say, I think it's up to like the individual person. Like all of us are gonna have totally different, opinions on this, and I think, like Banna said, it changes over time. And I think you just gotta kind of stay like true to like what you want and like who you are. Like I know in my experience, like coming out of college, I knew I wanted to find a role where I could do half design, half development. And I like interviewed with a certain mattress company that's based here. And they told me that they wanted me to pick, like I had to literally pick my path. I felt like I was in like a video game or something. And I told them, I was like, thank you, but I can't do that. Like that was really important to me. And I think now I'd probably be like, oh man, you should have just focused in really hard on like one thing, because that would have been a killer job and I would have had tons of stock options and stuff. But, the past is the past, but that's just my take on it.
Excellent. All right, back to some questions that I skipped so I could ask that one of Banna. What are a few suggestions you have for UI UX students who came up from a totally different background and are applying for internships now? Jesus, this might be yours. Suggestions for UI UX students, because a lot of them didn't come from a UI UX background. It's in terms of education, it's relatively a new thing, right? So how do you get an internship in UI UX when you're coming from a completely different, discipline? A related discipline, but
Yeah. I mean, it's really just getting that portfolio and getting your pieces and making those connections, getting on LinkedIn, talking to, finding groups. Like there's a UX and AZ group on LinkedIn, and they have meetings. It's important to kind of like make those connections so you can actually, get those jobs. Because I don't think it's an issue switching over. Because I think if you're doing it young and you're in school making that switch, you're going to be able to develop that portfolio. It's the next part is finding those jobs and making those connections. That's probably harder, but that's the thing, like they don't really maybe teach you necessarily, but that's something you need to take the initiative and go on the outside and be part of.
Do companies work with you to help build your skills? The closer to graduation I get, I don't feel 100% prepared in my on my own for a job straight from school. So maybe I get some feedback from each one of you. Did you get some mentorship maybe at your first job, or have you worked at a place where they provide mentorship? Alan, I'll start with you and then I'll come around to the stage.
Well, I'm like 20 years in the industry, so my only way was mentorship or taking some weird boot camp from some person that called themselves an expert, but there was no way to vet them until you actually met them. But I can tell you now, I'm working on skilling my existing team doing some assessments, and just understanding where they want to go with their careers, and just actively help them and support them to grow in that particular role. So that's an excellent question to ask in an interview. And typically when you're interviewing with some companies, you should be talking to a recruiter or someone in HR. That might be the good person to ask, like, does the organization provide continuous education or any kind of mentorships?
Excellent. Yeah, mentorship was the only way to do it with UX. There wasn't, it wasn't an academic thing until even a few years ago. We have one of the first programs here at ASU that even has an academic program in it, and it's more widespread. But the kind of boot camp from unnamed person is still pretty popular way to kind of get into it as well. Matt, did you have a mentor at your first job, or do you work at a place that provides mentorship?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of mentorship, and I stumbled into even understanding what that meant. Again, car business. I didn't know what I was even. I didn't know I was getting mentored when I was getting mentored, and it was called a mentorship program. So that's a story about me again. The thing with continuing your skill set or mentorship is that hard work piece. There's a hustle piece to that, and going back to the honesty thing, there's you gotta, like, if there's somebody out there that you admire, email them and ask them to mentor you. Just do it. And if you get the email wrong in 3 months, go back and go, oh my gosh, I sent you an email 3 months ago and it's the worst email I've ever written in my life. I've got it better now and I still want to learn from you. Like, just be yourself, be honest. Like, most things are fixable. And that's what I did. There was a guy in town that was a director of photography, Frank DiBeniera. I had this huge work crush on his work, right? He had just the way he would frame shots and the way he worked was just amazing to me. I would email him and call him all the time, like, hey, can I work with you? Can I work with you? I just want to sit next to you at the camera. Okay, then I don't need to sit next to you. I will do whatever you ask me to do on set and have 15 minutes with you after the shoot day's over. And I just kept pursuing that. I walk in, hey, can I work with you? He's like, leave me alone. And so finally, I know what actually happened in the background. Their person quit and they were like, let's call that guy. And so they called me and they worked my tail off. I didn't sleep for 3 days straight. It was my job to keep everything charged and ready to go for the next day. And I ran so many coffees for these people. I can tell you their orders still today. My feet were bleeding, literally, and I worked as hard as I've ever worked because that opportunity was there. So that's the thing, is like, you just have to, if you want something, call everyone you know and ask for help, including myself. Vanna just offered it. You have our information. There's no excuse. So if we motivate you in any way, if you think we can be helpful, you have people literally sitting here in front of you saying, we want to help you. So you got to get past the fear and like not get in your own way on this stuff.
Yeah, we're total goobers. You
Yeah.
can approach us. Hey, Seuss, did you get mentorship on your first job, or is that something that a job that you worked at provided?
Not the first job. It was because I was more a production artist that just gave me the work and just let me do the work for 6 months before they let me go. But eventually when I went to, when I was freelancing with somebody named with Richard Haney, eventually, he was kind of a mentor because I actually met him at I think at a design event that took place here, and he was looking for a freelance. And so he kind of became my mentor. I left, but then he, because we had that kind of relationship, he reached out to me like, hey, I'm at this new company, are you looking for a job? So, having that, creating those kind of relationships can help you, lead roles or get roles in the future. Luckily, some of the companies I've been part of have been pretty open about having those kind of programs. Literally at State Farm, they do have a mentorship program. WebPT, even both WebPT and State Farm, they want you to continue to grow as a designer, because when you graduate, whatever you learn is, it's like nothing what you're going to learn out in the real world. They're two different mindsets. You're turning in things for grades versus you're turning in things for, like to have an impact in the company, shareholders, things that can affect where you can maybe lose a job, or you're getting money from it. So it's a whole different world. But if that's something you care about when it comes to finding mentorship, make sure you ask those kind of questions during your interview, like some kind of program like that. Because it is always important to continue to grow. I literally transitioned from a graphic designer to UX UI, because I continue to learn. And even doing some things on the side, during the pandemic, I decided to try to learn new skill, play piano. So I'm always trying to learn, so if there's a hobby you always wanted to do, I would always take the initiative, try to do those things, because they could complement with your design as well.
Excellent. And Ben, same question to you. Did you get mentorship at your first job or ever in any job you've had?
Yeah, I think I've had mentorship at pretty much every job I've worked at. And I think, if a company is like hiring, especially junior level designers, developers, whatever, like they should ethically be doing that with like the responsibility that they're going to train you up. Like, I think any junior person who's joined a team I've been on, we all know like, all right, yeah, we're going to need to like coach you up a little bit. And that's part of the deal. Like somebody did that to me. I got really lucky. I had a great mentor at my first job and he helped me really like curb the, learning curve that comes with that first like agency or whatever full-time experience. And I mean, like at my current job, like we aren't hiring anybody that's below senior level. And that's because we have so much going on that we know we don't have the time and resources to dedicate to give like a junior mid-level person the mentorship that they need, which I think is awesome. And you should really, make sure you're asking in the interview process, like, who am I going to be working under? And then make sure like you aren't accepting a job offer without having talked to that person, like there kind of needs to be a little bit of a rapport. But even now, like, I don't know, even outside of work stuff, like I have mentors in like my business life and my personal life and all sorts of stuff. Like, I think it's really important to kind of soak in that knowledge from other people who have done it and can kind of help you ease some of those mistakes that you may make along the way.
Because we all make mistakes. Yes, we do. All right. I want to be conscious of our time because we've gone 20 minutes over, but it's been sort of amazing. So thank you so much for the panel for sticking around. Great advice. So many words of wisdom. I've jokingly put some of them in the chat, but you can't see that. So anyway, thanks to our sponsors, AIGA Poly and Fulton Schools of Engineering. Thank you to Professor Barnett, who has been moderating the questions. Thank you so much for that. Also, thanks to all the attendees, like 200 people this evening, which was absolutely amazing. It's so lovely to see so many of you in person, but also get so much active participation online. Everyone that registered for this event will receive an email with these slides and the hyperlinks that were shared in the chat, as well as the recording. Good night.